From our very childhood, we are taught that we have a Yetzer Tov and a Yetzer Hara, an evil inclination and a good inclination. Yet, the Torah tells us that we have to serve God b'chol levavcha, with all of your heart, in which Chazal understand that to mean to serve God b'shnei yitzrecha, with your good inclination and your evil inclination. Now, here's the issue. Why would the Torah need to tell me to serve God with my good inclination? One would think by virtue of it being called the good inclination, the Yetzer Tov, then I would inherently perform mitzvos with it by definition. How could someone even conceptually sin with their Yetzer Tov? So I think we could actually understand this. And the Torah has a lesson for us, especially living today in a 21st century Western society. Take a look even at the pop culture. In the DC comic world, in the pop culture that we see nowadays, and the movies and the kind of media that we're consuming. Take one of the most iconic superheroes, Batman. He is willing to beat the Joker or whichever one of his enemies to a pulp, but he'll never cross a line and actually kill them. Time and time again, he'll lock them up in Arkham Asylum, only so they break out again, and that they murder more people, they commit more theft, and more atrocities on society. Then he catches them again, sends them back into Arkham Asylum, and then rinse and repeat, more people keep dying in this unending cycle. In fact, in the Injustice storyline, in which finally Superman is willing to kill the Joker and succeeds, the way the storyline goes is that he crossed a moral line. And that was the beginning of his decline, in which he became irredeemably evil. He becomes this ruthless dictator who takes over the whole world because he was finally willing to kill the serial killer himself and to save lives. That was considered an act of immorality. That was unethical. Rav Moshe Feinstein, in the Darash Moshe, tells us that when the Torah is saying to serve God, even with our good inclination, it's because even the Yetzer Tov requires the Torah's guidance to be used correctly. For instance, let's say I have the inclination to give tzedakah, to give charity. Well, that is an inherently positive impulse, but how I channel it is the question. Someone could be very kind-hearted, but they could be easily fooled. One could desire to give charity, but then it could be scammed and it could go to the wrong place entirely. And then at the end of the day, their intentions were good, but the results were not so good. Likewise, when it comes to the Jewish people, we are described as Rachmanim b'nei Rachmanim, that in our very nature, the Jewish people are merciful, are compassionate, and care about others, even those who are not so good. But the challenge is that the world seems to recognize that as well. And they will use that trait of ours to manipulate us into doing things that are not for our own welfare. And this is where we have to ask ourselves the question, does our moral guidance come from arbitrary norms dictated by the culture that we find ourselves in the Western 21st century? Or do they come from the Torah HaKadosha? Are they informed by the will of God? This too is answered by a pasuk in the Parsha, in which God gives us chukim umishpatim tzadikim, that God gives us these righteous laws for us to adhere to. Notice, Rav Sternbach points out, that it doesn't say that they are tzodkin. These aren't words, these aren't laws that are ethical, that are correct. They are, of course, but that's not what's being described over here. It's saying that when you and I observe the Torah, when we keep the chukim umishpatim, we become tzadikim. We become righteous as a result. This is inherently different than when I, let's say, obey secular traffic signals. Traffic signals, okay, so I shouldn't run a red light. But if I adhere to the red light and I stop and I go when there's a green light, that doesn't make me a moral, ethical person just because I followed it. I should follow it. But when I keep the laws of the Torah, even the ones that are just dictating and regulating general society, since the laws of the Torah are grounded in morality, by virtue of keeping the halacha, even without the chumras, even without the extra cherries on top, I automatically, just by keeping the Taryag mitzvos, the 613 mitzvos, I too get the status of a tzaddik at that point. And this is because we each have a Yetzer HaTov. We each have a positive inclination to do good that's inherent and innate within each and every one of us. But even our Yetzer HaTov requires guidance. But where do we get that guidance from? We don't get it from Batman. We don't get it from Superman. We don't get it from politicians, and we don't get it from the media either. Rather, our Yetzer HaTov needs to be informed by what the Torah has to say, by the Chukim Umishpatim Tzadikim, and by keeping those laws and applying them to the world that we live in today, we should all be Zocheh, and will all merit, God willing, to be considered Tzadikim in the eyes of the world, and most importantly, in the eyes of God. Good Shabbos.